We all wish we had a superpower, right? And for a lot of us, I think that superpower would be, well, simple mind reading.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
Just being able to look at someone and instantly know, what they're thinking, what they want, who they really are.
Well, actual telepathy is still firmly sci-fi territory.
Right. But social interaction specialist Patrick King, he suggests that if you learn to interpret speech, behavior, body language, in a structured way,
Yeah.
you can actually get pretty close.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is realizing this isn't some kind of magic trick. It's actually a skill you can train. It's built on observation and psychological awareness.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We'll
Right.
pull out the most practical, maybe the most challenging insights from King's work. Basically, a structured approach to help you become a much better, more accurate judge of character.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Okay, let's unpack this. We've got quite a bit of ground to cover, but we're going to structure it around 4 essential pillars. First, we tackle the traps. How to overcome those common psychological obstacles when you're trying to read people. And, honestly, this might be the hardest part.
Self-awareness is tough.
Then, second, we dive into the core motivations and personality patterns, what actually drives all human behavior.
The why. Got it.
Third, we explore the silent language, how to interpret nonverbal signals.
Body language, facial expressions, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And finally, we'll look at some, let's say, advanced practical strategies for stress testing a story and maybe spotting deception.
Okay, full toolkit. Let's go.
Right. Let's start with those obstacles because, we all think we're pretty good judges of character, don't we?
Yeah, massive confidence. But the sources point out we are constantly misinterpreting single signs. We jump to these, wildly misguided conclusions.
It's like we're wired for efficiency, maybe not necessarily accuracy.
Precisely. And King lays out 4 prerequisites, things we absolutely have to master before we even try to read a gesture or a comment.
Okay, prerequisite 1.
Foundational. Establish the baseline behavior.
Yeah.
You simply cannot look for deviations or anomalies unless you know how someone normally acts.
Okay, that sounds simple, but actually, I can see how that's a huge trap.
It really is.
Like, if you meet someone for the first time, say in a really high-stakes meeting, you don't know their baseline.
Exactly.
They might be quiet, reserved, and you think, they're nervous, or they don't like my idea.
And that's the classic mistake right there.
Yeah.
What if they're just naturally introverted? That reserved way is their baseline. It's how they communicate under pressure.
I see.
Now, if they were usually really loud and, theatrical, and then they suddenly became quiet, that's the deviation you should probably pay attention to.
Okay, but what if you only meet someone once? Or you're in that first meeting? How do you get a baseline quickly without, a long history?
That's a good question. You have to sort of test the environment, create a mini baseline, start by observing how they act when the pressure's low.
Like small talk.
Yeah, exactly. Small talk about the weather, traffic, something neutral.
Yeah.
Watch their energy level then, their posture, their mannerisms. That low-stakes behavior, that's your temporary baseline.
Okay.
Then when you shift to the high-stakes topic, the actual negotiation or whatever it is, that's when you look for the change from that initial observation.
Right. Rely on the immediate past if you don't have the long-term data. That makes sense. And, that ties directly into prerequisite 2, doesn't it? Relying on multiple data points.
Yes. Avoid the single moment trap.
We love that drama, though. The one perfect clue. The single raised eyebrow that reveals everything.
Yeah, the Sherlock Holmes fantasy. But King really stresses, never form a conclusion based on just one gesture, one comment. It's about the pattern.
Okay, give me an example. Like the frowning coworker.
Perfect example. You see a coworker frown right when you announce a big change.
Yeah.
Easy to think, they hate it.
Right, done deal.
But if you zoom out, look for more data. Maybe they haven't made eye contact all morning. Maybe they're gulping coffee like there's no tomorrow. Maybe they've been fiddling with their wedding ring nonstop. That whole pattern tells you they're stressed, sure, but maybe that stress has absolutely nothing to do with your announcement. Maybe it's something personal.
You have to widen the frame. Which, okay, leads us to prerequisite 3. Consider the context.
Always. Behavior has to be interpreted within its surroundings.
Like someone speaking really loudly, you might think they're angry or aggressive.
But maybe they're just trying to be heard over a noisy cafe or, construction outside. The context changes the meaning entirely.
And King also mentions our own role as part of the context, right? How we can influence things.
Yes, that's crucial self-awareness. If you're the interviewer, sitting behind a big desk, you're in a position of power. That context might naturally make the other person seem more nervous or reserved than they normally are.
So my presence is actually changing their behavior.
Exactly. You have to mentally subtract that environmental factor, that relational dynamic, before you can really judge the behavior itself.
Okay. And the last one, prerequisite 4. This feels like the hardest one. Questioning your own biases. Avoiding projection.
Definitely the hardest. Our assumptions, our fears, our prejudices, they act like filters, constantly twisting the data we think we're seeing.
So what we think we see in someone else, it might actually say more about our own stuff, our own insecurities.
Very often, yes.
Huh.
King puts it really well. It says more about us. Think about it. If you're really worried you messed up last week, you might see your manager's perfectly neutral, focused expression as, like, suppressed anger aimed right at you.
When really they're just thinking about what to have for lunch.
Exactly. Or interpreting averted eye contact purely as deceit, when the person might just be incredibly shy, or maybe it's a cultural norm for them.
So separating your own emotional baggage, your anxiety, your ego from the observation, that's key.
It's the only way to see their behavior clearly. That self-awareness, knowing your own biases, is actually the first step to reading anyone else accurately. Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Once we've tried to avoid those traps of bias and context, to truly understand why someone acts a certain way, we need to look at the deeper underlying forces.
Right.
And King suggests actions are basically driven by two main things: their motivations and their personality.
Okay, let's tackle motivations first. He breaks this down into 4 factors, right? Factor A is the stuff we usually hide, even from ourselves, subconscious urges. King calls it the shadow, linking back to Carl Jung.
That's right, the shadow. It holds the parts of ourselves we tend to deny or repress. Things like our insecurities, maybe secret ambitions we never pursued, perhaps even a degree of self-loathing.
And the key insight is these urges don't just vanish because we ignore them.
Not at all. They surface, often in unexpected ways, sometimes through projection onto others, or maybe through self-sabotaging habits.
Okay, give us a really concrete example. How does this shadow thing play out, say, at work?
All right, imagine someone who secretly, deep down, always dreamed of being an artist, but they chose a safe, maybe high-paying corporate path instead.
Okay, happens all the time.
Right. Then they encounter a colleague who actually did it, quit the safe job to pursue their art. Now, the first person doesn't just feel a little bit envious. They might become intensely critical, like irrationally critical of that colleague's art or their decision. They might constantly downplay any success the artist colleague has. They're not really criticizing the art itself. Subconsciously, they're sort of punishing the person who acted on the ambition they denied in themselves. That intense, maybe out of proportion critique, that's the shadow popping up.
Wow. Okay, so it's really not about the other person at all. It's about their own internal conflict being stirred up. That's powerful. All right, motivation factor B, the classic pleasure principle.
Seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. We all know it.
But the sources emphasize a really critical rule here. Avoiding pain is way more powerful than seeking pleasure.
Absolutely. It's wired deep. Goes back to primal survival stuff.
Yeah.
Think about why people stay in really miserable situations. Bad jobs, unhappy relationships.
Yeah.
It's often not because they like the misery. It's because the fear of financial instability if they quit, or the fear of being alone, or just the fear of the unknown pain of change. That fear massively outweighs the potential future pleasure or happiness.
So we're wired to minimize pain first and foremost.
We are pain minimizers first, pleasure seekers second, which also means, rule number 2, emotions often overrule logic.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. Like, knowing logically you should save money.
But the immediate emotional kick from buying that shiny new gadget just wins out.
Every time. We think we're rational, but we're often just rationalizing our emotional decisions after the fact.
Totally. Okay, factor C brings in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The idea that our behavior is really dictated by which level of need we're currently focused on satisfying.
Right, the pyramid. Physiological needs at the bottom, safety, love, belonging, esteem, and then self-actualization at the top.
And the application here is understanding where someone is on that pyramid right now. Are they primarily focused on basic security, like keeping a roof over their head? That's a safety need.
Or are they maybe looking for recognition and respect from their peers? That's esteem.
Exactly. And knowing that helps you understand their motivations. If someone's grappling with job security, a safety need, turning down a really creative but maybe risky project which taps into self-actualization makes perfect sense.
They aren't being lazy or uninspired.
No. They're prioritizing stability because that's their most pressing need right now. That priority shapes their immediate actions.
Okay, and the final motivation factor, factor D, the desire to defend the ego.
The ego, our precious self-image, how we want to see ourselves smart, competent, respected, good.
Right.
And when the idealized image gets threatened, the brain's primary goal becomes protecting the ego, often overriding everything else, including logic and truth.
So let's say a really competent star employee makes a big, embarrassing mistake. We should almost expect defensiveness initially.
You should definitely anticipate it. They might immediately start blaming external factors. The instructions weren't clear, or my team let me down, or the system crashed.
Because admitting fault directly threatens that core self-image of being the competent one.
Precisely. Maintaining that internal story, that narrative about ourselves, often takes precedence over objective reality. And then quickly, the second part of the equation is personality.
Okay, how does that fit in?
Personality is more about the consistent pattern of behavior and thinking over time. It's their typical way of being. Understanding that pattern, like knowing someone is usually calm under pressure, or maybe they only do their best work right up against a deadline, allows you to predict, with some reliability, how they'll likely react in specific future situations.
Okay, so if motivations tell us the why, the underlying drive, how do we gauge someone's immediate emotional state, the feelings right now? That brings us to the silent language, nonverbal cues.
Yes, and King makes a strong argument that nonverbal communication is often more reliable, a better reflection of true feelings,
Why is that?
because it often comes from the more emotional, instinctive part of the brain, the limbic system. It sort of bypasses the rational filter, the part that carefully chooses our words. That emotional brain, in a sense, finds it harder to lie.
Interesting. So what are we looking for? How do we spot, say, stress or discomfort?
Well, one key area is looking for self-soothing behaviors. These are often unconscious actions people do to comfort themselves when they feel under pressure or threatened.
Like what?
Things like rubbing their hands together, maybe touching their neck or face, fiddling with their glasses, or maybe repeatedly smoothing their clothes or playing with jewelry.
Little nervous tics.
Kind of, yeah. They're attempts to, physically calm the internal anxiety. And we also often see subtle versions of the classic fight, flight, or freeze responses.
Okay, break those down in terms of body language. Flight.
Flight looks like physical withdrawal, even small movements. Leaning back in their chair, angling their body slightly away from you, maybe placing objects like a coffee cup or a notepad between you and them, creating distance.
And fight. Is that like actual aggression?
Usually much subtler. It might manifest as a sudden sharpness in tone, maybe small, jerky hand gestures, or perhaps clenching their fists, maybe resting on their lap or just out of sight. Little assertions of pushback.
And freeze.
Freeze is often about stillness, almost rigidity, sitting very upright and stiff, maybe gripping the arms of the chair or the edge of the table, minimizing movement, trying to become less noticeable, like prey hiding from a predator.
This is where we should probably talk about microexpressions too, right? Those super fast facial movements.
Yes, microexpressions. Tiny, involuntary, fleeting facial movements. They're fascinating because they seem to leak out the true, unfiltered emotion before the conscious brain can clamp down and mask it.
So you might see like a flash of contempt or fear.
Exactly. Maybe a split-second wrinkling of the nose showing disgust, even while they're verbally agreeing with something. Or a widening of the eyes showing fear, just for an instant.
But there's a caution here, isn't there? They're hard to spot and easy to misinterpret.
Very much so. They are hard to see reliably without training. And crucially, even if you spot one, it signals discomfort or some kind of emotional reaction, maybe a feeling of being threatened. It doesn't automatically mean deception. It's just one more data point, not a smoking gun.
Okay, so don't jump to conclusions based on a flicker you thought you saw. What about broader body language? Confidence versus insecurity, that seems easier to read.
Generally, yes. Confidence is often signaled by taking up space. Think expansive gestures, sitting or standing tall, shoulders back. And importantly, leaving the torso open and exposed,
Why the torso?
because it contains the vital organs. Exposing it signals a lack of fear, a feeling of safety and dominance. It's a vulnerable area, so keeping it open shows confidence.
And insecurity is the opposite.
Right. Insecurity often manifests as shrinking, hunching the shoulders, crossing arms tightly across the chest, literally shielding the torso, maybe tucking legs and arms in. Physically trying to make themselves smaller, less visible, less vulnerable.
What about mirroring? When someone copies your posture or gestures,
Mirroring is a really interesting one. When people feel connected, aligned, comfortable with each other, they often unconsciously start to mimic each other's body language, maybe even their speech pace or tone.
So it's a sign of rapport?
Usually, yes, a strong sign of connection and comfort. Conversely, a lack of mirroring or suddenly stopping mirroring can signal distance, discomfort, or maybe disagreement, even if their words are still friendly.
Okay. And finally, what about appearance and speech patterns themselves?
Definitely relevant. Confident people tend to speak clearly at a steady pace with fewer fillers. Nervousness often leads to faster speech, maybe stumbling over words, more ums and
And
ahs.
appearance, clothes.
Appearance communicates intent, or at least self-perception. Pay attention to the effort someone put in and how suitable their attire is for the context.
So someone showing up massively overdressed for a casual event.
It could signal insecurity, needing to assert status. Or maybe they're trying to create distance, seem more important. It's about looking at the choice within the context and asking what message it might be sending, consciously or unconsciously, like a subtle form of ego defense played out in fabric.
All right, let's move to the final section, the advanced application. Actually trying to detect lies. The sources are pretty clear here. This is really difficult.
Extremely difficult. The best liars are good at hiding the tells, and honestly, simple nervousness can look a lot like deception, even in truthful people. Stress looks like stress.
So you can't just look for fidgeting and declare someone a liar.
Absolutely not. That's a classic mistake. The key strategy King proposes is actually quite counterintuitive.
Okay.
You don't confront the lie directly, especially not at first.
Okay, so what do you do?
You get them to talk. You stress their brain. See, lying is much more mentally demanding than telling the truth. You have to invent the story, keep track of the details, monitor the listener's reaction, suppress the truth. It's cognitive overload.
So the goal is to increase that cognitive load until they slip up.
Exactly. You make them work so hard maintaining the lie that they eventually make mistakes or inconsistencies appear.
Okay, so technique 1 for doing this.
Start with casual, open-ended questions. Keep your tone friendly, non-accusatory. You're just trying to get their version of the story flowing. Encourage them to elaborate.
So instead of, were you at the cafe yesterday? You'd ask.
Something like, oh, you were at the cafe yesterday. Tell me about it. What was the vibe like? Get them comfortable. Get them talking broadly first.
Okay, get the main story out. Then technique 2.
Shift to specific, unrehearsed details. Liars usually rehearse the main plot points, where they were, who they saw, the basic alibi. They generally don't rehearse the peripheral sensory details.
Like?
Ask things like, what song was playing in the background? Or, which table did you sit at? Or, what kind of coat was the barista wearing?
Okay. Because truthful people often recall those little details naturally, just as part of the memory.
Right, because they actually experienced it. Liars often struggle to invent those minor, specific details on the spot without pausing awkwardly or breaking concentration on the main lie. Their answers might become vague or evasive.
Clever. Okay, technique 3. Subtly misquote them.
This one's very effective. After they've given you a detail, later on, you repeat it back to them, but slightly incorrectly. Introduce a minor error.
So if they said they arrived at 3 p.m.
Later, you might say casually, right, so you got there around 2:30, just before it got busy.
And what are you looking for?
A truthful person will almost always immediately correct the detail. No, it was definitely 3.0. No, they know the fact. A liar who's juggling the fabricated story might just agree with the incorrect detail to avoid scrutiny, or they might hesitate, showing their story isn't firmly anchored in real memory.
Okay. And technique 4 is about looking for unnatural patterns holistically.
Yes, don't fixate on one single thing, like avoiding eye contact or fidgeting. Look for a change in the overall pattern of their behavior. Do they go from being relaxed and chatty during the easy questions to suddenly very tense, overly formal, maybe guarded and evasive when the sensitive topic comes up?
That shift is the flag.
That drastic shift, yes. Also, watch for deflection. A big red flag is when you ask a simple, factual question and they respond with an aggressive counter-question aimed at you.
Like, why are you asking me that? Don't you trust me?
Exactly. Truthful people usually just answer the question. Liars sometimes try to make you the problem to shift the focus away from their shaky story.
Got it. And technique 5 covers over-explanation and emotional mismatch.
Yeah, liars often feel this need to explain everything, to plug every possible hole in their story to make it sound airtight. This can lead to way too much detail, like overly elaborate justifications for simple things.
Whereas someone telling the truth is comfortable with gaps.
Exactly. Truthful people are usually fine saying, I honestly don't remember what time it was, or I didn't really notice the color. They don't feel the need to have a perfect, seamless narrative for every tiny detail.
And the emotional mismatch.
That's a big one. Watch for emotional responses that just don't seem to fit the situation. Someone being weirdly calm and matter-of-fact while describing a supposedly emotional event like a major failure or accident,
Or the opposite.
or sudden, maybe disproportionate anger that seems designed purely to shut down your questions. The emotion doesn't seem authentic to the context. It feels like a tool being used to deflect or control the conversation.
Okay, so what does this all really mean for us, trying to get better at this? We've covered this whole framework for reading people.
Yeah, it's a process.
First, you absolutely have to avoid those four big traps, especially your own bias. That means establishing a solid baseline, considering the context.
Getting yourself out of the way, essentially.
Right. Then, you try to understand the core motivations driving them, the ego defense, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, where they are on Maslow's hierarchy.
Understanding the why behind the what.
Then you look for those nonverbal signals, the patterns, especially looking for changes in patterns when maybe they're under a bit of mental stress.
Putting it all together.
So you really do now have the tools, piece by piece, to start practicing reading people, well, maybe a bit more like a book.
And as you start applying this structure, applying these ideas, just remember what King identifies as the central difficulty, the biggest trap.
Let me guess. It's us.
It's always us. It's your own bias. The entire exercise just falls apart if you can't separate your own feelings, your own assumptions from their actual behavior.
So that final provocative thought for everyone listening. The next time you feel absolutely certain about what someone else is thinking or why they did what they did, that gut feeling just screams, I know. Pause. Yeah. And ask yourself, is this conclusion based on information I've actually collected? Have I checked their baseline? Considered the context?
Yeah.
Or is this just a reflection of my own biggest insecurity, maybe my own greatest fear being projected straight onto them?
That moment of self-doubt, that questioning of your certainty, sometimes that's the most insightful part of the whole process of trying to understand someone else.